Decision logs are a fundamental part of your software project documentation. They're absolutely critical to maintaining a great relationship with your client and having your project run smoothly. In this video, we're going to be going over benefits of a decision log, what to include in your decision log, tips for keeping up your decision log, and then we'll be giving you free access to our decision log and decision detail templates. So stay tuned for that so that you can use those in your own business. So moving on to the benefits of decision logs. So in a project that goes on for a long time or that has stops and starts, it is incredibly common to forget why decisions were made, and then you have to revisit them. The decision log will stop you from having those same conversations or doing the same research over and over again. Second, if a client is upset that a certain decision was made, often they don't remember even approving of that decision, let alone do they remember the reason why. So the decision log will allow you to remind them of when, and most importantly, the rationale for why they approved of that decision. Then third, decision logs help to align large project teams, making sure that everyone stays informed of high impact decisions. And last but not least, the decision log will help you to onboard new team members because they're inevitably going to have questions about why the workflows, architecture, et cetera, are the way they are. And the decision log will help them to answer those questions on their own time. All right, so now that we've gone over how important decision logs are and how much they bring to the table, let's go over how to create a decision log and what goes into it. So this is our decision log template. So basically the decision log is a list of all the decisions that either need to be made or have already been made. So this decision column is just a brief description of the decision that needs to be made with a link to the decision detail document for that decision. And we're going to be going over that in depth shortly. What's the status of each decision? Has it not been started yet? Is it blocked, in progress, or has it already been decided? This way you can see at a glance what decisions are still on your plate. We have the outcome or a brief summary of the decision that was made. And we have the driver. So the driver is not the decision maker, but they are the person responsible for driving the decision-making process to completion. This is usually the project manager. This is the person responsible for overseeing the collection of information, the research process, as well as getting contributors together to discuss the issue, setting meetings. All of that is the responsibility of the driver. Then we have the approver who actually made the decision, or there may be more than one approver here, and the date the decision was made. So to go over a really simple example, we have one here where the decision was to choose which events calendar plugin to use and which options to go for. The status is already decided. The outcome was that we decided to use this particular plugin and this particular plan. And here was the driver, approver, and the date. So let's dive into the decision detail document, the one that is linked right here. So here is our template for that. Up here is a table that's pretty straightforward. To reiterate from the decision log itself, we've got the decision to make, just a brief summary, the driver, the approver. But here, this part is new. So here we're going to list the contributors. These are typically subject matter experts that were responsible for providing information or doing research. A lot of times this is your developers. Then we have who to inform. So once this decision is made, who is the person or people who need to be informed so that they can revise their work accordingly, or maybe they have other decisions to make that will be affected by this one, etc. Then we have the date decided. So the first part of substance here is the context. So why did this decision need to be made in the first place? And what are the resources, constraints, and business goals that pertain to this decision? So for example, there may be budgetary constraints or regulatory constraints that factor into the decision, and those need to be listed here. In our example, which is a super simple one, I'm not going to belabor this table. It's pretty straightforward, but as far as context, we were looking for a calendar plugin that could do the following functionality. And this is some background that we were testing and researching this particular calendar plugin at the time for its ability to meet those requirements. Then we have the relevant data section. So here is where you're going to write up relevant research or information or link to it, or ideally both. So in our example, with our relevant data, we determined that this Events Calendar Pro plugin did meet the requirements that we listed above, and we have links to support that conclusion. And we also list some add-ons that should be considered. So we found that this plugin offered some optional functionality, and we described and linked to those functionalities there. Then we have the options considered section. Here, we're going to list the various options that were available and considered, and we're going to list the benefits and disadvantages of each option. For example, the benefits and disadvantages that come up again and again would be things like cost to implement, as well as the impact on technical debt. And as you know, those two often are traded off against each other. So here we describe the options and we link to them, but what we did to make it even nicer was create a table. So sometimes this is going to be applicable to a decision, sometimes not. So we didn't include it in the template, but just know that in something like this, where things can be, multiple options can be considered in a straightforward way, it can be really nice to lay them out this way, where you describe each option, list the pros and cons clearly so you can compare and the costs. Then finally, we have the outcome. So we not only write up the decision that was made, but also the rationale for that decision and what consequences does that decision have. So again, who needs to be informed and how will the project work or direction be affected by this decision? In our example, since it's a pretty simple example, we spoke to the client about their anticipated business goals and needs, and we determined which options they needed and didn't need. And we found that the most cost-effective option for their needs was, this particular plugin and plan. As far as the consequences, they were pretty simple. So we needed to inform the client so that they could purchase the appropriate plugin. And we needed to inform the developer so that he could proceed on the calendar functionality work. So now that we've gone through what to include in your decision logs, I'm going to talk about some tips for keeping up your decision log. Number one, as soon as the decision is made, record it in the log while you still remember everything. If you don't, it's going to be both much more time consuming as well as less accurate to keep up your decision log. Second, review your decision log regularly. The easiest way to do this is to work it into your project cadence. For example, if you have regular sprint planning meetings, you could dedicate a portion to each meeting to reviewing your decision log, making sure it contains all the decisions that were made recently, as well as making sure that progress is being made on the decisions that you have yet to make. Third, store the decision log in a centralized location that all the team members and stakeholders can access. That can be a shared document, but ideally it's a collaboration tool like Confluence that you can integrate into your project management tools. That way you can tag people, you can reference relevant epics and tickets, and you can also generate action items and resulting work that can quickly be assigned. Fourth, ask relevant stakeholders to acknowledge decisions once they're made in some kind of trackable way. That could be as simple as emailing them the decision detail document and asking them to reply. You don't want a decision log that no one ever looks at, and also a paper trail of acknowledgements can be really, really invaluable later. And finally, in your decision detail documents, include links to relevant email threads, relevant video recorded meetings, so that you don't have to hunt those down later. So I'm going to right now display the link where you can get access to our decision log template as well as our decision detail document template. So there it is. And make sure to also like and subscribe because this is just the second video in a series we're doing on key pieces of software documentation to maintain. So stay tuned for more video guides like this one, and thanks for tuning in.